Hi, everyone. And welcome back to Dimensional Wellness. This is DeeDee, and I'm so glad to be here with you today, exchanging some energy. Today, we're going to be talking about two really interesting dreams, and I'm going to talk about them together, though they're not necessarily the same topic, but I had them I had them around the same time, like in the same time period. So I thought that these would be interesting to talk about. And I'm kind of thinking about it because I was actually watching something about Inky, and they spelled it ENQI, which is kind of interesting because like last month, I lit these 3 green candles and then these 3 red candles. And then I ended up finding a Q and an I foam letters. Well, my child, he found a Q and an I foam letter in my room. And I mean, they had all of the foam letters, and I guess they had cleaned it up the day before, and I guess I just missed that. I don't know. But the only 2 that I ended up seeing were the Q and the I. And so I was like, oh, interesting. It must be some type of message that they are helping me to bring in some energy. So anyways, I saw this Inky spelled ENQI, and I know that that's also chi or a key. So I thought that was very interesting. And when I saw the depiction of him, he had this double-headed hammer, which looks very similar to the do they call it a double labrys? The double-headed axe? And it reminded me of this dream that I had. So I'm going to talk about the double-headed hammer first. And I think I've posted the video about the double-headed axe, which, was not used to actually, chop people up. But I also use that as a hammer as well. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about transferring spirits into bodies. And I'm sure that'll be interesting. Okay, so the first dream, I had this dream sometime in 2021, I believe. Sometime in 2021, so I can't remember exactly when. Let me think about what was going on during that time. Definitely the end of 2021. Sometime the end of 2021, I had this dream, okay? So anyways, in this dream, I was, this was really funny. This is so funny because this is like not how my childhood was, and I will explain it afterwards. So I woke up in this dream and I was sitting in this class, okay? So this was a class that I knew that it took place before we came to Earth. And I'm saying we because there were a lot of people that I remember that I grew up with, high school, middle school. It was like a wide variety of people. So not everyone, of course, but there were some key people who were like key players in my life at a point in time. And we were all in this class. And like I said, this class was before we came to Earth. And so this was kind of like spirit school. But everybody looked pretty much how they would look in high school. So it was kind of like a high school, well, it started off as high school, actually. So when I think about it, it started off as high school, and then we all transitioned to like a college level course together. And then after the college course was implied that you would be going to Earth to like almost like a practicum, I guess. That's how I would describe it. Okay, so in both of these classes, I was kind of like the teacher's pet. Okay, that's how I would describe myself. Now, I was also like really cool with a lot of people in the class, and so it's kind of like I was like it was a very family feeling, so everybody knew each other. So it wasn't like class pet and like a, oh, she's the weirdo, and, you know, she's always, you know, talking to the teacher, and everybody was kind of cliquish. It was very much like a family, like we had all grown up with each other, and everybody just knew that that was the energy that I held. I like to be, you know, head of the class. I like to be helping the teacher to explain concepts, and I wasn't too overbearing, but that was like my position, like almost like the ambassador for the teacher. And so by the time I was like in high school, and then we'll talk about college in a second, but by the time I was in this high school class, I had really developed my personality to where I wasn't like overpowering the teacher or anything. So I just sat comfortably in a position, I would say. And so it was also kind of known that eventually at some point I probably was going to be a teacher in the school. It was like a very seamless segue into, obviously, DeeDee is going to be teaching at this school and then probably principal at the school at some point in time, okay? Which is not how my childhood was on earth. I was very, very conscientious of not, you know, trying to outdo anyone or being the, you know, class know-it-all, anything like that. And so I actually was very reclusive to a certain extent. I mean, there are definitely people that I was cool with, like in high school. We had like a high school group and stuff like that. And, you know, I definitely was like a known voice in that group. But I made sure that I didn't like want to be like, you know, that know-it-all, like number one in the group and like bossing everyone around. Okay, so then by the time we got to like the second phase of the dream, we were in a college setting, okay, and everyone knew my name, you know, everything like that. Everybody knew me, okay. So in this college class, everybody had a specific seat, okay, and of course, going along with the archetypal energy I was in, my chair was front and center. Not center, I'm sorry, the very first chair. So first to the left when you walk in, every person who walks in is going to see my face first. That was my chair, okay? And so on this particular day, I walked in and there was a new girl. And obviously she was new because she didn't know that that was my chair. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I just decided to take one of the seats in the back, which in this space is not usually what I do. But like I said, like in this lifetime, that is what I chose to do. Was I usually sit in the back of the class. I try not to be like too involved. I try to be more in the background, kind of observing things. But anyways, I was in a situation where I was like, okay, she's new. And then eventually as she figures out how the situation works, she'll realize that she's sitting in my chair. So I don't have to like, you know, be like, hey, get up, which I wouldn't do that anyway. But, you know, blah, blah. I'm like, let her sit there and let me get kind of a feel for her energy, right? So anyways, so everybody's kind of looking, you know, I guess to see what I'm going to do because it's so out of the ordinary for me to go sit anywhere else but my chair, right? So I go sit in the back and then the class gets started. And as I'm sitting there, there's a spirit that starts talking to me. Now, this is something that's also not out of the norm in the class. Spirit interaction and talking to you is definitely a normal part of life, like an integrated part of life. Everyone was like in tune with at least a member of their spiritual team. So this was also not out of the ordinary. So there's a spirit that came to me as I was sitting in the back, and I was just, you know, doing my normal thing, you know, answering questions, blah, 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 blah. And the spirit was like, you're going to have to keep your cool with this girl that's new. And so I'm like, okay, what do you mean? And they're like, well, she's an orphan and you want to be very, very careful with how you deal with her because she could get violent. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, do you mean like just for me to sit back here and chill? Like in what way could I spark her to anger? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like so in my reality and how I do things. I'm like, okay, obviously something that I naturally do could be offensive to this girl. So why don't you just go ahead and tell me what it is? Because I don't think that I do anything offensive. And so they're like, no, not that you do anything offensive, but there could be things that you could do that could cause a distance between her and the teacher. And this teacher could be seen as like a mother figure for her. And so like in the position of her being an orphan and her wanting to, you know, reach out to the teacher, you know, you could be seen as a threat. And so I'm like, okay. So as the lesson is going on, there's a question and the teacher asks, you know, anybody have the answer? And so I raise my hand and the girl looks back at me. So I probably answered about 2 questions or so, maybe like 3. And so on this turn, she looked back at me. Now, I guess I was supposed to realize like I was already getting on her nerves, I guess, because she was also answering questions. But I'm just going back and forth. So I'm not even keeping track of like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, she's answered 4 questions. She's answered 5 questions. I'm just being me. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm like doing too much. So I decided to just be quiet. So I was like, okay, I'm just not going to answer the question. If that's going to rock the boat, I haven't been in this situation before. If that's going to rock the boat, I'm just going to be quiet, okay? So I'm laughing, but this part that's coming up, boy, I got so upset, okay? So I guess the teacher noticed, of course the teacher notices, right? The teacher notices that I'm not answering questions. And so this woman, this girl raises her hand, because she's not a girl. We're like college, so we're like young adults, right? So this girl like raises her hand. You know, the teacher is giving her really good feedback and stuff like that. You know, everyone knows that she's an orphan, so, you know, we're trying to be like a support system, right? And so she raised her hand to ask the question, and the teacher asked me to answer it. So in this moment, it was kind of like, okay, are you going to like not answer the question and engage with the community because this girl could be upset about it and cause a problem? Or are you just going to answer the question and then give her some time to like work on her shadow? Do you know what I'm saying? And so I was like, you know what? I'm about to answer the question. So I answered the question, right? And this girl was livid. She got out of her chair. She flipped over the desk. And then she like walked out of the room. And so the spirit comes back and is like, well, you have to be very careful with her. I'm like, why do I have to be careful? I'm like, why do I have to be careful? Like, can't you just get her some parents? You know? And clearly that's like not what I was saying. Like, I mean, that is what I was saying, and it was very immature to say. But I was getting a little irritated, you know what I'm saying? I was getting a little irritated. So I'm like, can't you just get her some parents? I don't know. Like, why do I have to, like, not be myself to make this person comfortable because she's violent? Just help her not be violent. I don't know. Like, clearly she look like she must need some juvie right now. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. So we all leave class, and it's time for us to go home, okay? So I go home to a family member's house, which I see pretty frequently in dreams when it's talking about these kind of big shifts in the way that I'm approaching things. I've noticed that. It's either like a big old family secret or, you know, a friend secret or whatever. And I see specific people's houses in the family. And so I go back to this family member's house, and I realize, like, oh, okay, there must be something I need to really think about in this interaction. Like, this is not just, like, an interaction that's just, like, a weird day. I'm supposed to be learning something from this. I'm like, I wasn't even asking for I wasn't even asking for a lesson today. So I'm like, ugh, great. So I go home, and how it's set up. So oh my gosh, yes, that's how it's connected, because the second dream I had was also in this house too. Okay, very interesting. So I go home, and the way that it's set up is like the kitchen is very close to like the backyard, and the backyard is like huge, and it's got these double doors, right? So I go home, and I'm talking to my family, okay? And I'm telling them about the crazy experiences that I had that day, right? And they're my family, because we have a really good relationship in this dream. They're my family. So, of course they're like, yeah, that's crazy. You shouldn't have to, like, what they say, dim your light, for other people, to be comfortable, right? So they're hyping me up. They're like, you shouldn't have to do that, blah, 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 blah. So next thing I know, I got this weird feeling that, like, I was being listened to by this girl. And I thought, in my head, I was like, how in the world would she be able to listen to me in my house? She don't even know where I live, right? Child, the next thing I know, this is where it gets crazy. The next thing I know, the back door swings open, and this girl comes charging in, and she punched me in the face so hard. Oh my gosh. She punched me in the face so hard. And I felt it in the dream. And in that moment, I immediately was like dropped down in the dimensions. I was dropped down a dimension, and this was so wild to me, I immediately started growling like a wolf. Like, I was like livid. And I think that they purposely dropped me down to give me time to respond to this without like the reptilian brain, the more animalistic part of me tapping in, right? Because she was probably assuming like, oh, okay, she's a brainiac, or she's a nerd, or whatever she was assuming, and not that I would tear that behind up. So I was like, okay, look. So I immediately, and I remember that I was actually growling, and like this was actually wild, y'all. I was actually growling and stuff like that. And I remember that Ray was like trying to nudge me, and I could actually see a little part of him, but I was so in this dream that I was not about to like wake up. And there's like a motherly energy, not the mother in my family, but another motherly spirit, who I guess is the one that was talking to me the whole time, who was actually like holding me while I was raging out, because I was about to tear her to pieces. Okay, I was about to tear that girl to pieces. And so finally I calmed down, and I like almost went back into my body. Okay, so she was still standing there, and she was like looking smug, and all my family was like, what are you doing? Who are you? What gives you the right? And so what I did was, the next thing I know, I stepped outside. So my family was talking to her, like, you're out of your mind. Where are your parents? Blah, 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 blah. I didn't even get a chance to tell them, the whole story about her being an orphan and stuff like that. Like, I was going to get to that part. But I stepped outside. I kid you not. I stepped outside in the backyard, and I literally like sent out some type of mental SOS. And the next thing I know, it was like Thor's hammer. I kid you not. There was this hammer that flew into my hand, and it was a double-headed hammer. So it was like a rectangle with like two squares. Well, three squares. It was three squares. And then, so the middle part would be like Thor's hammer, right? And then it had two extra squares on it. So it was like a double-headed hammer. And so I got that hammer, child, and when I tell you, I actually went up a dimension, which I thought was interesting. Now, I was still interacting with this going on, but I knew that I was like up a dimension because I was in the air with this hammer. And when I tell you, I slammed the middle of it. So I didn't hit her head on with a side of the hammer. I hit her with the middle of the hammer. And I slammed it so hard on her third eye. I was like, oh, you about to wake up today. And so I slammed it so hard, and she hit the ground. And when she got up, She was a new person. She was good. I'm laughing because it was partially true. I mean, she wasn't like, you know what I'm saying, all the way together, but it definitely slammed some sense into her. I was like, oh, you picked the right one today. You about to wake up today. Because ain't no way you really didn't lost your mind, but we about to find it right quick. So I slammed it so hard. Does this army truck? I know you lying. Girl. This army, oh my gosh, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. There's been this army, I don't know why I'm just paying attention to this right now, but there's been this army truck that has been sitting behind me for like the longest, and all of a sudden I just saw out of my rearview mirror that it's got a huge Freemason logo on the army truck, and it says Big Louie on it. What? Is that a real army truck with a Freemason logo on it? Boy, I'm about to get out and I'm about to go check it out. I know you lying. Because I've been seeing like they have like this flag that's got like 3 people, I guess, on it. I can't really see because the flag is like blowing in the wind, but it's got like 3 army people on it. And it's got like this huge Freemason logo on the side. I'm like, what? And I didn't even notice that until I finished talking about this, which is just absolutely wild. And I'm trying to figure out what that what that flag. I will stay here the whole time just to see who in the world gets into this truck. Because I know you lying. What? And it's so crazy because I was thinking about the Freemasons earlier. So maybe they have to do with like the second part of these dreams too. But actually, as I was over here in this parking lot, I saw Bell, Belle, and then the number 33. You know, 33 is supposed to be like, they utilize it for occult purposes because people get very weird. Like every single goat they see, they think it's Baphomet. Every single, white and checker floor they see, they think it's like the occult of light and dark and stuff like that. And I'm like, these things have existed for a very long time. There are people who have utilized it. That doesn't mean that every time you see it is connected to that. So I'm just tripping because I've never seen that on a military truck before. I've never seen that on a military truck. And it says Big Louie. And I feel like I wrote something about Lewis. I'm going to have to, when I do come from Big Louisiana. Okay. That was very wild. That's not what I was expecting, okay? Interesting. Okay, so let's get into the second part of the dream because this is probably really relevant. Okay. So the second part of the dream, and like I said, I had it around the same time. So that's why I'm mentioning it. But then when I really thought about it, it also happened in the same family member's house too. And I know that side of the family definitely had a lot of people in the military. Okay, so in the second dream, I woke up in this family member's house in their living room, and I was just like chilling on the couch, right? And then the next thing I know, I realized that there were all of these cats outside. Now, I connect to cats, especially black cats and stuff like that. I think I'm reposting my Dream of the Black Cat. So make sure that you listen to that because that's super connected. And if you're connected to black cats, it could give some insight, some other connections to the black cat as well. So, I'm just tripping because I have not seen a Freemason logo so boldly on a car. And I'm just like, what? Like, how? But anyways, okay, whatever. And I'm in front of this like Kia Soul. Okay, let me focus, child. Okay, so anyways, I'm sitting in the living room, and the next thing I know, there's all these black cats that, not black, they're not all black. There was like a bigger black cat, and then there's like a red cat and like a brown and white kind of tabby cat. I don't know, different cats. I don't know if it's a tabby cat, child. I don't know. But, you know, different colored cats, and they were coming into the backyard and coming up to this double door where I was sitting. And so as I was looking at the cats, I knew that they weren't just cats. I knew that they were like women in the form of cats. And so it was like I had some type of remembrance of them, like I knew them, or maybe I was like a part of their little cat club at some time. But I couldn't quite remember, okay? So the next thing I know, they phased through the door, okay? So I did not get up and go open the door for the cats to come in. They phased through the door. So when they phased through the door, this was so wild to me. When they phased through the door, the house that I was staying in shifted. And it went from just like a normal living room with me sitting on the couch to a different relative's house. So it was still the same setup of the previous relative's house, but this other relative, they had a living room that was like a drop down den. I don't know if that's what they're called, child, but you know, the den is like drop down, so it's a little bit lower than the normal floor level. So it's like a step down den, okay? So that's what it transformed into, like a step down den. And I was sitting at the edge of the floor, I guess, where it dropped down to. And that drop down had turned into a sacred pool, a sacred bath, okay? So all of the cats were on the floor, okay? And I was like waiting in this pool. So as I was waiting in the pool, I started to remember my position in this I want to say caternity, because you know, Freemasons are like a fraternity thing, and I'm thinking about that now. Like the caternity. Okay, let me get serious. Okay. So anyways, I'm waiting in the pool. I started to remember that that I had some type of position in this, and that, you know, I don't remember exactly the reason, but I just wasn't a part of it anymore. I just decided that I didn't want to be like an active part of it anymore. And not that like I had distanced myself from the group in the sense of like, you know, I don't want anybody to contact me. They can still contact me and ask me questions and things like that, but I just didn't want to actively be a part of that group. And I feel like if I really think about it, I wanted to be human, I guess. Like I wanted to have like a human experience, and it was really hard to go between a human experience and then like the cat shape-shifting kind of situation. It was too hard of a life to balance, because like we were all women, but when you are still like in the shape-shifting form, I guess that's what I would say. When you're still like in the shape-shifting form, it's hard, like what you're expected to do as the shapeshifter part and hold down like a family and hold down reality. And so I think I just decided that I just wanted to try like the human situation. So anyways, they were coming to me because they were having a problem with one of my daughters, okay? So one of my daughters, we'll call her Flower. Something had happened where she was like fighting in the astrals, and someone had like critically damaged her body, like her physical body, her human body, right? And so they were like, yeah, we would have handled it ourselves, but we need some extra help. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, bring her in. So they brought her in this pool, and she was floating on the water, and she was like barely there. Okay, so I'm like, oh snap, we have to do something fast. And so I talked to her, and I was like, I know you've never experienced this before, and it's probably going to be crazy, but I've got you. Mama's got you. Like, you're good. It's going to be a weird feeling, but I promise you, like, don't freak out because you're going to be fine. Okay? So as I'm whispering that to her, I know she's not, 100% conscious or whatever. So I'm like, okay, we just gonna have to go with it, because I knew that, the process of healing her body was going to be a very new one for her consciousness to experience. The body is fine, but the consciousness inhibiting the body, or inhabiting the body, was going to have some issues with this. So her consciousness, okay, because you are not your body, but your body does have its own level of sentientness as well. So I'm like, okay, Mama's gonna get started. So so this is the process. So what I had to do was I had to take her consciousness and put it into another form or another body. Now, since we were in this place and we didn't have a whole lot of time, there were no vacant bodies to use, right? Which I'm sure is why certain people are trying to get clones, because they need a vacant body to house a consciousness for whatever reason. But we didn't have a vacant body. Everybody's body was accounted for. Okay. But I knew that in order to heal her body, I had to take her consciousness and put it somewhere else for a period in time so that I could heal the body completely by itself, because there's a lot of energy I was going to have to put through it, and the consciousness might not be able to handle that, and they might accidentally check themselves out just by fear of what was going on. Okay, so they might accidentally cut their silver cord and die, not realizing that this is not a death process, this is a healing process, right? So I didn't want to risk it, because this was her first time doing this. And so I was like, okay, now I kid you not. Wait, I kid you not. The only thing that I had was like a gingerbread cracker. I kid you not. The only thing I had was a gingerbread cracker. So I was like, let's just do it. I don't have a body, and I'm like, I have to work really fast because this cracker is going to disintegrate in this water pretty fast. Okay, so I'm like, I gotta work fast. So that's what I did. So I transferred her consciousness from her body into a gingerbread cracker. Okay? And so with the gingerbread cracker, I know some people will listen to this and be like, girl, what are you talking about? Child, look. The truth is a lot stranger than fiction, I promise you. So I had to transfer her into this gingerbread cracker. It was like a graham cracker. And so I had to keep her in this gingerbread cracker form for like 15 hours. That's how much time I needed to work on her body to heal it. To get it back to like full working capacity, or at least back to a capacity where her consciousness could take over and finish the healing process. But 15 hours, I was able to get it fully back functioning. Okay. So with the graham cracker, right, clearly this is like defying the odds, because usually you put a graham cracker, it gets solid, it breaks up, and it, disintegrates into the water. So I had to also use some of my energy to keep the graham cracker as together as I could. So I didn't need the graham cracker to be all in one piece, but I needed it to be relatively broken up in pieces, like still connected, because you could still put that together, right? Like, by the time it disintegrates in the water and it's like these tiny, minuscule, microscopic pieces that have fallen together, it's way too much time and energy, especially when the other body is not, formed all the way. It takes way too much tedious energy to find all the little tiny grams to put it all back together. But if you can at least keep all of the little minuscule pieces in the same area, then you can put the whole body, the whole graham cracker, the consciousness, you can keep the consciousness together. And so that's what I did, and I did it by the skin of my teeth, child. And I was literally in the dream for what literally felt like 14, 15 hours, holding the balance between these two things. It was actually wild. And so I'm like, sheesh. Like, you know, I love my daughter a lot, because that was like gruesome. It was like being in surgery for like 16 hours and balancing 2 bodies, not one. It was crazy. So anyways, then finally her body was done. So I was like, okay, let me transfer the consciousness. The girl didn't even remember any of it. She was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I was fighting someone and it wasn't going great, and I feel so much better. I'm like, girl, I'm glad you feel better, girl. I'm so glad you feel better. Because it's been a long 16 hours. You know what I'm saying? It's been a long 16, 15, 14, how many ever hours it was, child. It was a long time. And it was so funny because when I woke up, the first thing I thought of was like Chucky, you know, like that little doll Chucky. And then I ended up just like, you know, going on YouTube and being like, you know, what's the story of Chucky? Because I never watched Chucky. I'm not interested in no possessed doll or whatever. So anyways, I actually went to go listen to the story of it, and it said that he was an evil spirit that got trapped in his consciousness got trapped in the doll, and that he was actually calling out for Damballa, the grand zombie. He was actually calling out for him to put his consciousness back into his body from the doll body. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I was just doing in this dream. Super, super, super wild. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about one last dream, because now I'm thinking about this last dream that I had, which is also super relevant too. There is a dream with this person, with this guy. I'll just say this guy, okay? And so in this dream, and this is so interesting. This is so interesting because it's connected to the Wizard of Oz. And at this time, I didn't know that, like, the Wizard of Oz was actually an entity at the time. I didn't know that. I just found that out recently. You know what? Let me figure out what Lewis is. What does Louis actually mean? What does Lewis mean? Famous warrior. Interesting. Interesting. Lewis is an anglicized form of the Welsh name Llewellyn. Oh, interesting. Which means lion-like leader. Oh, well, that makes sense with the Freemasons and the lion's paw. Interesting. Okay. Lion-like leader. Okay. Ooh, and it's 1:19. I think I'm gonna save the last dream. Just save it for a different day, child, because it's getting hot out here. It is definitely Arizona in November, and it is 80 degrees, and I'm getting hot. So I definitely will talk about the last dream just another time. Maybe I'll fit it in with more Wizard of Oz connections. But anyways, you made it this far. Shout out to you. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend. Heavy on the commenting. I love to hear if you've had similar experiences, or, you know, if you've had experience and it went a different type of way. You know, are you one of my hammer tribe? I remember in the dream, I'm like, is this Thor's hammer? I'm like, no, this is not Thor's hammer. This is my hammer. So I'd love to hear about that and all those things. And be on the lookout for the next time I post a video.